Well, good morning to everyone participating in today's call. Earlier this month, we learned that a sharply rising positivity rate uh, would require us to close in person learning in Marion County once again. Needless to say, this was not an easy decision to make. It makes things so much more difficult for families. And candidly, I would do anything I could to avoid it, except endangering public health. One of the consequences of that decision is finding a way to ensure all students can access the tools required to learn, continue to learn remotely. Earlier in this school year, the Mind Trust opened a number of community learning sites. These locations provide e learning supervision and support for students of every background in every uh, zip code in our county. Available, by the way, at no cost to families. The city's Office of Education Innovation was very proud to participate and to support that effort. We are proud to join with the Mind Trust again today as the Mind Trust expands the program to accommodate this increased need. If you know a student who lacks the connectivity or the daytime supervision that remote learning requires, I urge you to take advantage of a community learning site near you. The Mind Trust is able to fund this expansion into January, but we know the need is likely to continue past that date. We are still waiting on Congress for round two of the CARES Act. But until then, our city must find ways to support and expand initiatives like this one. So I'm calling on residents, businesses, and the philanthropic community who have the means. Please help support our students who need access to technology, to meals, to quiet space, the type of quiet space that these community learning sites provide. The Mind Trust and the community site partners are ready to sustain this critical service if additional funding becomes available. Look, our kids are having a tough year. And as I say, if I weren't convinced that it would endanger public health, I would want to see every child in Marion County in a classroom with their friends and their teachers. Sadly, for now, that's not an option. But if our city can be strong for them, if our city can be generous for them, we can still help them thrive. So now I would like to welcome school leader for Urban Act at Washington Irving School 14, Nigina Livingston.
Hi, everyone. And Mayor Hogg said it's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. Brandon Brown from the Mind Trust. It's great to be in partnership with you as well. Just a little bit about our school. Urban Act Academy is an innovation school. We opened our doors to serve students in 2018. We utilize restorative practices and place-based learning as main components of our educational system. Our community is really unique given the significant number of students who experience poverty on a day-to-day basis, face housing instability, have food insecurities. However, in spite of all this, our kids are exceptional learners. They're curious, they're thoughtful, they're creative, they're caring and resilient, and we deeply love and care about them. Um, this time has been challenging for all of us, students, staff, families. The biggest concern is the learning loss, but we're also concerned with our students' mental health, wellness, emotional health and wellness, and overall safety. Many parents work during the day, leaving older siblings to be caretakers for younger students, which makes it really difficult to cultivate a learning environment at home. We've also heard of instances where there are multiple families doubled up in a home, which also can make learning challenging. There's a number of technology challenges. IPS was really generous in giving us technology and Wi-Fi hotspot devices, but every home and every situation doesn't always accommodate the best signaling. We believe that our parents are doing the best they can with what they have. However, at times, people just need extra support, especially during the holidays when things can be really stressful. So I think the learning sites just provide a consistent support for students during these challenging times. I'd like to introduce Anna Cheney, who is a parent at Urban Act Academy. Her daughter Tara has been with us since third grade. She's now a fifth grade student. And I would invite her to just share her positive experiences with the community learning sites.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be here to speak on this. I have to say, when we were first offered the chance to go to the community learning site, I was completely against it. My feeling was that my daughter is pretty strong academically and that we would be able to handle her education at home with the remote learning. Um, our first problem became with technology. So I am one of the lower income families. I'm fortunate that I was able to get the low cost internet, um, except it doesn't run very well. Um, the school provided us with a hotspot, and we are also a family that is doubled up. So my oldest daughter and grandchildren are here. Um, my grandson is also a student at Urban Act. He's in kindergarten. So now we have two students trying to access technology and the Wi-Fi. Um, Tara was getting extremely frustrated. She was beginning to feel like Zoom had something against her and it kept kicking her out over and over. And at 11 years old, you don't understand that that's happening system wide. You think it's just happening to you. Um, Again, I'm fortunate Tara is high academic. So I thought it would just be a breeze. Well, until we found out that Tara was getting so frustrated, she actually skipped class at home, which just didn't work for mom very well at all. Um, and then I began to see how withdrawn Tara was becoming. Um, she was in her bedroom trying to do her class, and I wouldn't see her. She wouldn't be around anyone for the whole school day. So I changed up areas, tried to make a learning center here at the home for her. Um, and it just was extremely hard on her. It was it was so hard for her socially and emotionally. Um, we're a family that is definitely connected at school. They are not just teachers, they're part of our family. That we're part of that community. And for Tara, the connection it was just completely like she was missing half of her family. So I decided, let's try the community learning center. Let her get out of the house. Let her be in a building that has much more stable internet connection. Um, and the change happened immediately, where she was I'd ask her how things were, and I wouldn't get much, but it's okay, or that she's coming home just like a normal school day, telling me what all they did. And there's so much more to learning than just sitting at a computer and your teacher teaching. I asked Kara if she could give me her thoughts on being at the community learning site. And from an 11-year-old, she told me it's much easier to focus. Um, she loves that she gets to interact with lots of different people. And she said it's so much more fun because they get to play games. And when I first heard that, I was like, well, yeah, of course it's fun. Well, those aren't just games, those are learning. I call that sneaky learning. So there's so much more that the kids are missing out not being in the building. Fortunately, I'm a family that has stable housing. I'm in one of the housing programs. Um, so currently, I'm a delivery driver. And I mean, I'm missing out on quite a lot of breakfast hours and lunch hours making deliveries because I'm not going to leave an 11-year-old at home by herself. Um, but for me, at least my rent's not base. I'm not worried about rent right now because I'm in an income based program. Um, Also, I worry a lot about our homeless families. Uh, it's hard to get an internet connection when you're sleeping in a car, or even the hotels that they are utilizing in the city to house homeless folks. Those typically don't come with great Wi Fi. So, one, for anyone who's on the fence of utilizing the learning sites, I would say it's definitely been much better for my daughter's well being. I felt comfortable with the precautions that they were using at the learning sites. Temperatures were taken before they even got to the building. Um, I was fortunate, like, if she didn't feel good, you don't feel so bad of keeping them home. Um, but just the benefit that I saw um, in my daughter was like two different kids almost. So I'm waiting for it to start back up, shall I say? Thank you for
That's,
having me today.
that's just incredibly, I don't actually know how to follow that. That was just terrific. Just want to share my deep appreciation for a lot of the educators across our city who have been working tirelessly to keep their students learning in the midst of just all of these challenges. And I also want to acknowledge the experience of a lot of our families like you, Hannah, who are just really doing your best to work with your school to make this challenging transition work as well as it can. And I just continue to be so incredibly thankful for Mayor Hogsett and his team for just all of their ongoing partnership. So at the Mind Trust, our mission is to ensure that all students in our city, regardless of circumstance, have access to a great education. And right now, that not only means access to high quality instruction, but it also means access to basic needs like meals, reliable internet, and support for virtual learning. This is why we're proud to announce today that there will be 22 community learning sites in operation from November 30th to January 15th that will have the capacity to serve more than 800 students. We're investing an additional $207,000 to ensure these sites continue to be available at no cost to families. Sites will be located in all areas of the city, at churches and community centers, and even some school buildings. Community learning sites are open to any student currently enrolled in a K-12 school of any type. All sites will follow CDC and local health guidelines to ensure the safety of our students and our staff. And to follow social distancing guidelines, there are strict capacity limits at each site, so families must register as soon as they can to secure a spot for their student. To see a full list of site locations, hours, and capacity limits, and information on how to register, please visit communitylearningsites.org. Here at the Mind Trust, we're proud to have contributed more than $485,000 since August to create and sustain this important initiative. And we're deeply thankful to members of our community and groups like the Mayor's Office who have already financially contributed to help us keep this critical service free for our families. And as Mayor Hogsett mentioned, we anticipate these sites might need to be extended well beyond January. And we're asking for the community's help to keep them going for the families who need them the most. Please visit themindtrust.org to contribute. 100% of your donation will go directly towards serving families who might not otherwise be able to afford tutoring, childcare, and technology, or even meals. I want to reiterate my respect and appreciation for educators and parents across our city who are facing enormous challenges caused by this pandemic. And I want to also thank our incredible community learning site partners for their willingness to once again step up and join us in this effort. The Mind Trust believes in the power of community to solve seemingly intractable challenges, and we're grateful for the opportunity to serve in this way. Thank you so much.
As always, if you'll put your name and outlet in the Q&A box, we'll call upon you and our speakers will be able to answer your call or your inquiry. I'm sorry. The first person is Eric Berman from WIBC.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Mayor. And I've got that problem again. Hang on. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Two related questions. How is gathering students at community learning centers better from a public health standpoint than gathering them in schools as we had been? And second, more broadly, I'm sure you've seen the same op-eds I have from public health folks arguing that schools are the last place we should close, that we've got a controlled environment there, that the spread's not as big a problem. What is the rationale for closing them while other things have stayed open?
Well, Eric, thank you for your question. Let me give you my perspective, and then I would welcome Brandon and Patrick McAllister, who's also on the call, to add to that perspective. First, it's a very good question, and I'm sensitive to it. But it's just simply not possible to responsibly order the same types of shelter in place orders that we saw in the spring, so long as Congress simply refuses to provide even the most basic form of businesses. And so when we're seeing positivity rates among school-aged students rising, we simply just cannot ignore the public health challenges presented by rising positivity rates. So as the op-eds say, or often comment, why are you closing schools and allowing restaurants and bars and other businesses to stay open? Well, I've tried to answer that. I mean, we just simply don't have the same assistance that we did back in April. There's no paycheck protection program. We had individual stimulus checks received by Marion County residents. We had an eviction moratorium. So I guess the dichotomy is rising positivity rates, frankly, everywhere, but particularly among our student age population, and yet really the inability to shelter in place as we did back in March and April, and I think into early May. But secondly, and I do want to emphasize this as well, Eric, the challenges that our schools are facing are real, they are significant, And unfortunately, they're not simply related or directly related to community spread among students, although that's obviously the metric on which we make these decisions. Rather, what Dr. Virginia Kane has consistently reported to me, hearing from school leaders, is that the community spread was leading to positive tests among staff, teachers, and that required the additional quarantining of any and all who had come in close contact with those positive staff members. And it was decimating staffing levels in many schools throughout Marion County. Worse yet, a number of the public school districts and the charter school systems had signaled to our office their intent to go virtual as a result, which would have led to a patchwork of school delivery models across the county, with many working families likely pulling students out of one school district to try and find in-person education. In my opinion, the result would have been chaos. And as such, we felt like a uniform public health order was preferable, as difficult as it is and remains to provide. So it's a tough decision, but it is part of the reason why today's announcement of more community learning sites is so critically important. So I'll end my filibuster and certainly allow Brandon and/or Patrick, frankly, and/or anyone else on the call to offer their insight.
I'll go next, sir. So I think the other thing that I'll add from our perspective is that the community learning sites actually will have significantly smaller populations than a school would have. Schools typically have anywhere between 200 or 300 students to up to 1,000 or 4,500 if we're talking about a large, complicated high school. But these sites will have significantly lower numbers of students, which will increase the safety level of those schools at that time. And I guess I'll turn it over to either Brandon or Shannon from the Mind Trust to talk more specifically about what those sites actually look like in terms of student population and the precautions that are taken to make sure that children are safe at those community learning sites.
Yeah, so
No, go ahead, Brandon.
sorry, Shannon. So that's exactly right. And I think from my perspective, what we're talking about here are 22 sites serving around 800 students. And that 800 number is actually, one school in many parts of our city. So we are talking about much lower numbers. And I have been really heartened because many of these sites have already been running now for 2 or 3 months. And we have not had significant spread in any of these sites. And I think that really gives me faith that continuing to be really diligent around all the health precautions and continuing to keep the site numbers small will be safe for our kids and staff and allow a very safe environment for kids to learn during the day.
Great. Well, that ends our Q&A portion. Thank you all so much for joining us today. A release will be going out from the Mind Trust. And if you have any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you all so much for joining us.